Part 1. Read these words. 1. See. 2. She. Shoe. Show. Sip. Ship. As. Rush. Rush. Push. Push. Shit. Show. Washing. Swedish. Shawl. Shake machine. English. Shop. Show. Special. Shrunk. Shoot. Finish. Solden sure. Wish. Demonstration. Television. Treasure. Garage. Casual clothes. Piglet. Asia. Measuring tape. Unusual collision. Ships. Chips. Ship. Ship. Sherry. Cherry. Shop. Chop. Catch. Wash. Watch. Children. Butter soap. Mrs. Church. Secure. Chum. Chops. Much. Treasure. Shoulder. Which. Cheaper. A delicious chicken. Choose. Children's lunch. Orange juice. Right child. Which job. Village jail. Watch chain. Collect chess. Large gentleman. With chair. Large cherries. Hook jam jar. How much cheese? Teach German. Part 2. Read this text. More U.S. adults who do not already have children are saying they are unlikely to ever have them. A new Pew Research Center survey finds findings that could draw renewed attention to the risks of declining birth rates for industrialized nations. Experts are concerned that the U.S. birth rate, which has declined for the sixth straight year, may not fuel enough population growth on its own to keep the future economy afloat and fund social programs. Women between the ages of 18 to 49 and men between 18 and 59 who said they are not parents were asked the question, thinking about the future, how likely is that you will have children someday? In October, 26% of them said it's very likely, a 6-point drop from 2018 when 32% answered very likely. Meanwhile, the share of Americans who answered not too likely in 2021 grew to 21% compared to 16% in 2018. When asked for a reason, 56% of childless adults who said it is not all or not too likely they will ever have children said it because they just don't want them. This is a change for in 2018 when 63% of childless adults in they just don't want them. This category said it was because they had no desire for children. The time around 43% said other reasons, including medical issue, economic or financial reason, and lack of parental help. Of the question how the child care crisis is keeping moms out of work. When the pandemic led a child care single mother like Dennis Tyre were left in the lurch, unable to work, coupled with the recent release of federal Democrat data. This poll points to a long-term revolution in parenthood trends in the United States, the spiraling cost of child care, healthcare, and education, along with global instability, including the coronavirus pandemic and climate change, could all be contribution to a broader change in attitudes to marriage and pregnancy in life. U.S. birth rate falls to its lowest level in decades in wake of pandemic. April, the Census Bureau reported that in the last decade, the U.S. population grew at the second slowest rate for any 10-year period since the nation founding. Posted 3,000 parents and non-parents online in late October as part of a broad study of nearly 10,000 U.S. adults known as the American Transplantal Survey. Those who said they have no children were asked to rate their desire to have them in the future, whereas adults who said they already have children were asked to rate their likelihood of having more. The same question were asked in a similar poll conducted in late July to early August 2018, enabling a comparison of trends over time. There was no difference based on gender in the response among parents and not parents. According to Pew, men a woman, and queerly likely to say they will probably not have kids or more kids in the future. There was a difference based on age. However, with adults in the 40s, far more likely than younger adults to say they're unlikely to have any more children in the future. Part 3. Read the story. She was walking lazily for the first April sun was directly overhead. Her umbrella broke its rays, but nothing blocked the head. The sort of four-wheel had the crashes you with its energy. A few buffalo were tethered under coconuts. Browsing the perched Fergus Oceanal, a car went past, leaving its streets in the melting pitch like the wake of ship at sea. Otherwise, it was quiet, and she saw no one. In her long white Sunday dress, you might have taken Ginny Nairn for 14 or 15. In fact, she was 12, a happy, uncomplicated child with a nature as open as the red hibiscus that decorates her black, wizened, laying-haired generation. Early, her family had come to Trenton from India and over the sugar plantation. Her father had had some success truck buying and clearing land around Rio Cristalina and planting it with coffee on the dusty Fergie. 20 years ahead of Ginny, a car pulled up. She had noticed it crashed by once before. She did not recognize it and could not make out the driver through it. The dark windows themselves a black, its gleaming paintwork. As she parked it, the driver glass started to open. "Hello, Ginny," she heard behind her. She paused and turned. A slight color rose beneath her dusky skin. Rafi Kirjani was tall and blond and always well dressed. His black eyes and large with white teeth flashed the sunlight as he spoke. Everyone in Rio Cristalina knew Rafi. Ginny often heard unmarried sister talk trivially of him, of how inevitable to marry him, and then they will squabble over who it make and be loud at Ginny because she was too simple for any man to want. "How do you know my name, Rafi?" she asked with a thrill. "How do you know mine? Everyone know your name. You're Mr. Kirjani's son, right? And where you're going, Ginny?" She hesitated and looked down at the ground again. "To chapel," she said with a faint smile. "But Ginny, good Hindus go to the temple." His rich, cultured voice was gently mocking as he added with a laugh. "Or maybe the temple pundits aren't your taste in color?" She blushed more deeply at the reference to Father Olivier. She did not know how to reply. It was true that she liked young French Prince, with his funny accents and blue eyes, but she had been going to the Catholic chapel for months before he arrived. She loved its cheerful hymns and its simple creed, one God, so different from these miserable Hindu gods who squabble with each other like her sister at home. But add to that vulgarity of Rafi's remark bewildered her because his family were known for their breeding. People always said that Rafi would be a man of honor like his father. Rafi looked suddenly grave, his dark skin seemed even darker. It may be that I regret his words. Possibly he saw the confusion in Ginny White's with brown eyes. In any case, he did not wait for an answer. "Can I offer you a lift to chapel in my 21st birthday present?" he asked, putting his sunglasses back on. She noticed how thick their frames were. "Real good," she thought, like the big fat watch on his wrist. "It's a Mercedes from Papa. Do you like it?" he added nonchalantly. From the shade of her umbrella, Ginny peered up at small lawn cloud that hung motionless above them. The sun was beating down mercilessly, and there was an ague in the air, an overpowering sense of growth. With a handkerchief, she wiped the sweat from her forehead. Ravi gave a tug at his collar. "It is air-conditioned, Ginny, and you won't be late for chapel," he continued, reading her mind. But chapel must have been the last thing on Ravi's mind with Ginny. After a moment, his hesitation achieved his over, for he drove her instead to quiet sugar field outside town, and there, with the Mercedes concealed among the sugar canes, he introduced himself into her. Ginny wasn't a days young. She barely understood what was happening to her. The beat of calypso filled ears and the sugar cane stored over her as the cold dropped from the air conditioner placed against her knees. Afterwards, clutching the red flower that had been torn from her hair, she lay among the tall, sweet-smelling canes and sobbed until the brief tropical twilight turned to starry night. But she told no one, not even Father Olivier. 2 weeks later, the little market town of Rio Cristiano was alive with gossip. Rafika Jenny had been promised the hand of Sunita Morpani. Like the Kirjanis, the Morpanis were an established Indian family, one of Caribbean, but while Kirjanis were diplomats, the Morpalisians were a commercial family. They had made their fortune in retailing long before the collapse in oil prices had emptied their customer pockets. One of the vessels in the Caribbean, but while the Kirjanis were diplomats, the Morpalins were a commercial family. They had made their fortune in retailing long before the collapse in oil prices had emptied their customer pocket, and now Morpalani stores were scattered of some of the rich land. Prudently, they had diversified into banking and insurance, and as a result, their influence was felt the high-class level. It was a benefit influence, of course, never upset, for people always said the Morpalins were a respectable family, and well above reproach they had houses in Port of Spain, Tobago, and Barbados, as well as in England and India, but their main residence was a magnificent, sprawling colonial mansion just to the north of Rio Costano. The arranged marriage would be the social event of the following year. When Jeannie heard of Rafi's engagement, the loathing she had conceived for him grew into a sort of numb hatred. She was soon haunted by a longing to repay that heartless, arrogant brute. She would give anything to humiliate him, to see that leering, conceit grin whip from his face, but already she was unmoved. On weekdays she went to school, and on Sundays she went still to Father Olivier's afternoon service. "Girl, you sure does have a lot confessed to what with," her mother would say to her at times she come home late from chapel. "He's not witty, he's a man of God, that's a maybe, child, but don't forget he doesn't be a man first." The month passed, and she did not see Rafi again, and then it rained. All through August the rain hardly stopped. It rattled persistently on the galvanized roofs until you thought you would go mad with the noise. And if it stopped, the air was as sticky a trickle, and you prayed for it to rain again. Then one day in October, towards the end of the wet season, when Jeannie's family were celebrating her only brother's 18th birthday, something happened that she had been dreading for weeks. She was lying in the hammock on the balcony playing with her 6-year-old nephew Penny. Suddenly Penny cried out. Jeannie was fat through the little farmhouse. All celebration stopped. On the balcony, serious eyes were turned up Jeannie, and you could see what the boy meant. "God have mercy on you, Virginia. Watch the shape of your belly," cried Mrs. Nairn, exploding with indignation and pulling her daughter indoors. Away from the prying neighbors, her voice was loud and hard, and there was blackness in her eyes, like the blackness of the skies before thunder. How could she have been so blind? She caught herself for it, and her question but burst from lips. "How did you bring you some girl? What worthless about this you throw yourself upon? What man have you now? No decent, that's the brochure. And why did you blacken your father's name like this? At your age, the man didn't even live to see you born. Thank the gods heaven dignity of this. You're so good, some applying to your person, man of good child." At last her words were exhausted, and she sat down heavily, her weak heart pounding dangerously, and her chest heaving from the exertion of the heart. Then Jeannie told her mother the afternoon that Rafika Jenny had raped her. There was a long silence after that, and called her was Mrs. Nairn wheezing when less spoke. Her words were heard as jointed. "If anybody were to give damnation that Kirjani boy, I'll get it," she said. "Jeannie's sister was overstuck. She will take her over the health center, ma," asked Inda. "The midwife comes today. Is you crazy, girl? You all don't know what the woman does run. She mouth like a duck bottom. You all leave this to me." That night, Mrs. Nairn to her young doctor to see Dr. Khan, an old friend. Her husband was direction she could command. There was no doubt the child was pregnant. "And what can you do, Dr. Khan?" asked Mrs. Nairn. "Marry her off quick as you can," the land old doctor replied promptly. Mrs. Nairn scoffed. "Who will take her now, doctor? I just beg you. There's nothing you can do for us." A welcome breeze came through the slat of the sugary window. Outside you could hear the shrill persistent sound of cicadas, while mosquitoes covered at screen attracted by the bare bolt over the simple deck. Dr. Khan sighed and peered over the frames of his glasses. Then he lowered his voice and spoke wearily, like a man who has said the same thing many times. I make arrange something for the baby once it's born, but it must be born, my dear. Your doctor is slimy built. She's young. A child herself to you. She looks barely 3 months pregnant. Do fool yourself. It's the dad says given yours are correct. In 3 months Be full term. Anything now would be too messy. And it's brown, asked Mrs. Narin fiercely. It's brown. What does happen then? No, ma, I want it anyway. I want to keep it, said Jenny quickly. Don't be a fool, child. It's my baby, ma. I want to have it. I want to keep it. And who's to look after you and pray for the baby, even if that Kirjani does agrees to pay? Who does you hope to marry? I'll marry. Don't worry. You'll marry. You just be a fool. Who will you marry? Kirjani, ma. Is going to marry Rafi Kirjani. Dr. Kavgan Chucky, so your doctor is not such a fool you think, he said. I told you to marry her off, and the Kirjani boys worth a try. What does she have to lose? She's too clever. So Rafi Kirjani was comforted with the pregnant Ginny and remained on the side of the Sunday afternoon in the dry season when the cans were reading over having to be surprised of the nurse. He did not argue at all. However, at wants to marry Ginny, it may be that for him it was a welcome opportunity to escape connubial arrangement for which he had little ability. Dong Sutinta Morpolani instead of the head baker. Nobody ever pretended that she looked, or possibly he saw for a saw awkward police question the might have been difficult to answer once the fruit of his deceive. So the like of them, Mrs. Narin was staggered. Even Jenny was surprised a little. But perhaps he talked with embarrassment. He's not really so bad, whatever his reaction. You had to admit Rafi had honorably, and so did the Gemerfellini family. It privately. They felt their humiliation keenly. Publicly, they bore it with composure, and people were amazed that they remained on speaking terms with the man who had insulted one of their women and broken her heart. Sunita, five brothers, even invited Rafi to spend a day with them at their set villa in Mayaro, and as Rafi had been of the family his life, she saw no reason for Tomar brother just today for all things. There were tempting descent in going at the weekend. The work people literally in the beach, and one of their Land Rovers for the 20-mile drive from Rio Cristano. They were in high speed and joked with Rafi while their servants stole cold chicken and salad beneath the rich bench and patched eye box with beer and on choosing such a fine day, Suraj, the eldest brother, looked at his watch and his feet shivered uneasily as he said, "It's time to hit the road." His brothers gave a laugh and clambered on board. It was an odd, sardonic laugh. The hard-top Land Rover cruised through Rio Cristalino to the crossroads at the town center. Already the market threads were pitching their side sail and erecting great canvas umbrella to shield them from sun or rain. The promise of commerce was in the air, and the traders looked about expectantly as they load their stalls with fresh mangoes or put finishing touch to display of giant melons whose flesh-heaping innards glistened succulently under Silapon. The Land Rover turned east toward Mayaro, and a moment later was passing the cemetery on the edge of town. The road to the coast was busy with traffic in both directions, still carrying produce to market, and the frequent bends and potholes made the journey slow. At last, on an uphill track about 6 miles from Mayaro, the Land Rover was able to pick up speed. Its revved tires beat on the reflected start its long drum roll, and the early morning sunflash struck the coconut palm. Suddenly, a terrible thing happened. The rear door of the Land Rover swung open, and Rafi Kirjani tumbled out, falling helplessly beneath the wheels of a heavily laden truck. At the inquest, the coroner acknowledged that the nature and extent of Rafi's injuries made it impossible to determine whether he was killed instantly by the fall or subsequently by the truck, but it was clear at least he felt that Rafi had been alive when he fell from the Land Rover. The verdict was death due to misadventure. 3 days later, Rafi's remains were cremated according to Hindu rites. As usual, a crowd of people from all over Trinidad, distant relatives, old classmates, and anyone claiming even the most earnest connection with the dead man, come to mourn at the river's part, said Mayaro. Some of them were convinced that you could see Rafi at the hand of the gods, and the point for evidence to grey sky and unseasonal rain, but the flame defied the rain, and the stench of burning flesh filled the air. A few spoke darkly of murder. Did not the Morplant have a compelling motive, and not by chance did they have opportunity and the means, but mostly they agreed that with a tragic accident. It made literally different that it was a Morpalani truck that had finished Rafi off. Morpalani trucks were everywhere. Then they watched as they were thrown into the mud of the rest, soon to be lost in the warm waters of the Atlantic. "Anyway," said old Morno with a shrug, "who are we to ask questions? The police closed their files on the case before the boys was cold," and he shook the last of the rain from his umbrella and slapped impotently at a mosquito. "You might have thought that the shock of rabies that would have ensued in Ginny a premature delivery, but quite the reverse. She attended the inquest and simmered at the funeral, the expect that came and went. 6 more weeks passed before Ginny, by now 13, gave birth to a son at the public maternity hospital in San Fernando. When they saw the baby, the nurse clenched attention to each other. Then they took him away without letting Ginny see him. Eventually, they returned with one of the doctors, a big girl, who assumed his most unfurled beside manner to treasure. Ginny that the baby as well. "It's true as a little pasty, Major," he said. A nurse placed the baby in Ginny's arms. "But you see, the vet will let deliver and then forget you're very young, and you've both had a rough time with a day, 3 days." He eyes turned. Her eyes don't have a healthy color. Ginny looked into her son's blue eyes and kissed them, and in doing so a tremendous feeling of tiredness suddenly came over her. They were so very, very blue, so like Father Olivier. She sighed at the irony of it all. The worst of it all was the cruel doctor really so stupid. Surely he knew as well as she did that the pallid looks could never go.